Khan was the son of the sun and of Mother Moon. He arrived from the north at the beginning of time and flew over the earth, wearing his bird mask. He was without bones and he moved like the wind, raising mountains and carving valley with his will. Khan shaped the world and created fruit and plants, and then he created humans, giving them fruit and bread to eat. Whenever he came, he would bring the rain and the humans would flourish. The people danced for their creator to honor him. Khan was a good god, only asking that they honor him. There was balance and life had blessings. But over time, the humans stopped dancing to their creator. Prosperity grew arrogance as they forgot to honor their creator god. Their temples grew cold and gathered dust. "You have forgotten the source," Khan declared, and in his wrath he inhaled the clouds which brought the rain and exhaled a searing heat. The river shrank into thin veins, the forest withered and the world became a desert. "Now," Khan spoke, "you shall know the value of a single drop of water." Khan stayed and ruled over the dry land so the people would never forget again, until from the south the horizon shook. A second god came, from not the sky but from the earth. He marched across the dunes, each step an earthquake that cracked the dry crust Khan had created. "You reign over a graveyard," he shouted to Khan. His voice shook the mountains. Khan donned his bird mask and he flew to protect his kingdom and to battle his brother, Pachacamac, also a son of the sun. The gods erupted in battle, a collision of elements. Khan struck with storms of sand and blinding light, trying to scour the skin from his brother. Pachacamac heaved the earth upward, catching the wind god in a trap of stone and gravity. The sky turned purple with their fury. The ocean retreated in fear, then rushed back in giant waves as the gods grappled from the peaks of the mountains and the edges of the ocean. In the end, Pachacamac pinned his brother Khan against the sky, stripping him of his dominion. Defeated and diminished, Khan flew back to the north, leaving the humans. Pachacamac, the new god, looked down in disgust to the miserable humans who had survived the war. "You are relics of a failed age," he judged, and with a wave of his hand, he transformed them into something else, something new. Some grew fur and fled into the trees as monkeys. Others grew scales and hid in the sand as lizards. Then he reached into the soil and fashioned a new people, ones who would understand that the earth is both a provider and a judge. Pachacamac then left the desert as it was, a reminder of what it meant to forget the god and their anger, leaving the Nazca behind. Pachacamac left a void and the humans were alone. It was into this void that the sky gods of Hanapacha descended to claim what the Earthmaker or Pachacamac had merely conquered. The first to arrive was Inti, the sun. He did not walk upon the sand as Khan had, he pierced it from above. His descent was not one of a cooling rain, but of a golden clarity. He looked upon the parched Nazca basin and he saw a canvas. "The wind has stolen the water," Inti declared, his voice echoing in the heat shimmers of the horizon, "but the earth shall remember where it used to flow." Following Inti came Lalapa, the god of thunder and lightning. He rode upon a cloud that was the color of a bruised plum. He struck the mountains above with the valley in his sling, and the sound cracked the very air. He didn't just bring rain, he brought storms. If the humans wished to survive here, Ilapa roared, they must learn to speak the language of the sky. The arrival of these gods transformed the Nazca Valley into a sacred experiment of survival. Under the gaze of the Hanapacha deities, the new humans did something extraordinary. They didn't just farm, they began to draw. Guided by the condor, the messenger of the upper world, the people moved the dark sun-baked stones of the pampa to reveal the light sand beneath. They drew massive hummingbirds, spiders, and monkeys, not for themselves to see, but as beacons for the sky gods. Each line was a prayer, each geoglyph was a landing strip for the gods' attention. Then the sun, Inti, hit the lines at the solstice. The people knew it was time to plant. When the lightning Ilapa struck the mountains, they knew the underground Pequas, or the aqueducts, would soon swell with life-giving water. The arrival of the sky gods didn't end the desert, it turned the desert into a bridge. The people of Nazca became the land of experiments, a laboratory, trapped between the dry memory of Khan and the overwhelming power of the upper world, forever looking upwards to see if the gods were coming back. Welcome to Rebel Road. I'm Mary.
And I'm Haley. Welcome back, friends. Today is the day. Mary, are you excited?
Well, I'm super excited, Haley.
No, I could tell. You did a great job in that story. Well, after a little break to bring everyone our first check engine episode, and we do hope that all of our listeners found that interesting. But as mentioned, we are back for our regular episode, and as promised, the tridactyl mummies of Peru, or as we like to call them, the Nazca mummies.
If you haven't listened to our Road Snack episode on the Nazca lines, you may want to. It's a fun little episode, and it gave a little glimpse into the Nazca people's lives. But on to the mummies and the controversy and the chaos that they are creating in the scientific world today.
Well, let's start when they first kind of crept into the scene. And this is the first big debate in the Nazca mummy world, which is their discovery. They were found somewhere in the Nazca Valley, and its location is still unknown today. And there's a reason for that. The mummies were first discovered by the Waquiros, or we would call them today grave robbers. Now, in Peru, there's a terrible problem with the Waquiros. And we're going to keep calling them that because Mary likes to say Waquiros. And I guess it's just kind of fun to say. Now, the Waquiros, they're only interested in money. And they find the archaeological sites. There's no procedure or caution. They do a lot of damage to the artifacts. And worse, they steal the culture and the knowledge that we might discover during a legitimate dig. So that's the first flag on the play. The mummies are found by the Waquiros, and they're not the most reputable people.
You're right, Haley, providence. Now, there's no providence on these mummies. It's a fancy word. It just really means recording where you found it and at what depth it was discovered. And archaeologists love this so they can get an idea of what was happening around the artifacts that they find. But in this case, there's no providence. So because of that, it's kind of turned into a blanket to call them a hoax because they say, well, we don't know where they came from. Now, documented provenance distinguishes authentic artifacts from forgeries, and it proves they were not illegally obtained, which is crucial for ethical research. But like you said, Haley, right out of the gate, obtained illegally, and they won't say where. So that is throwing some crazy shade on these mummies.
Well, I mean, it's a Wakiro's dream find, right? A crazy alien looking mummy. Why not just sell that on the black market? I'm sure someone would pay big dollars for that. Mary, I'm not sure, what did they do? Were they so amazed they were like, "Oh, we got to show the world these things."
That's a good question, Haley. And why not just sell them on the black market? But one word, and it is the Wakiro's favorite word, money. So a legitimate find, or at least one that can be proved to be alien, would have been way more money than a black market questionable fake. And these mummies, they look fake right off the bat and they look weird. So these were so unusual that they thought, well, let's have some experts look at them. So in 2015, the mummies are found, and then they contact the Inkari Institute. And in 2016, they finally get to hold a meeting with Thierry Jamin, Jose Casafranca Montes, and the original Wakiro who found them, we'll call him Paul. Now, these meetings provided further insight into the circumstances surrounding the discovery. So at the time, Thierry Jamin and the team from the Inkari took the opportunity to study the biological material recovered by Paul. Now, Thierry Chaumin, and I'm probably saying his name wrong, he's French and I apologize, but he is the president of the Inkari Institute. And the Inkari Institute is a Peruvian non governmental organization founded by the French researcher Thierry Chaumin. In 2011, it was founded to conduct archaeological research, specifically searching for the lost Inca city of Patiti. Now, the group is known for exploring the Amazon and investigating Machu Picchu. So we all know what Machu Picchu is. It's amazing. So they know how to work very well within the Peruvian government, but they are not the government, which remember the Huaquiros. So
And the mummies arriving in a scientific institute in October of 2016. I mean, happy Halloween, folks, right?
yeah, absolutely. And, the Ankari, they're working to get these mummies secure and are beginning to do some early testing right then in 2016. They're trying to raise the funds, find the experts, bring on a team, and etc. So that takes time, it takes money. So in 2017, they finally get some specimens, they get some experts, and they start releasing some information. And Mexican journalist and UFO enthusiast Jamie Masson is the one that leads the charge. Now, they also had been working with two TV channels to document everything. And before we get into the really fun stuff, like what do these mummies actually look like, let's talk about the expert team that the Ankari Institute hobbled together.
In that expert team, we have Dr. Jose Benitez, who is the chief medical officer of the Mexican Navy. We have Mexican biologist Dr. Jose de la Cruz Rios Lopez and Dr. Korotkov, professor of medicine and biophysics at the Federal University of St. Petersburg, Russia. So, Mary, they have a really great crew.
Yeah, I think they do. And I'm just going to quickly point out here that Dr. Jose Benitez, and guys, I butchered these names and I'm so sorry. I apologize to you. The chief medical officer of the Mexican Navy, he was actually imprisoned for a few days. They were trying to threaten him to stop doing this. They did not want him to do this. So, and this sets us up. We have something unique, the Nazca mummies, and we have an institute that's very reputable, and we have experts in their fields that are also reputable, and we start to get some beginning findings. The first samples showed that they were indeed actual biological tissue, and it was old. It was around 1700 years old. And that puts us right in the time of the Nazca civilization and those Nazca lines. Now, some of the mummies were a little older and some were a little younger. But Haley, let's go ahead and start looking at these mummies.
Mary, I think one of the craziest things about the mummies, and first, let's clarify, they aren't mummies like we think of mummies, how people envision them in the movies, wrapped up and organs removed. These are actually dried out specimens with their organs still intact and found with no clothing. So, really, they are like desiccated humanoid figures. And we say humanoid because they are not human.
Right, Haley, they are definitely not human. And a lot of people think that they are very similar looking to what we would call the grays. Now, you know what the grays look like, right? With
Mhm.
the longer heads, smooth skin, no hair, big eyes, no noses. That's what they're thinking. But again, they're definitely not human and they're all dried out. And the desert conditions that they were found in, remember in Nazca, in that Nazca Valley, there's little moisture, no rainfall. That's why those lines have lasted so long. And the fact that they were covered in diatomaceous earth preserved them unbelievably well. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, diatomaceous earth is a natural powdery substance composed of fossilized remains of microscopic aquatic organisms, such as algae. So it acts as a safe insecticide and it's widely used for pest control, pet health. I use it in my chicken coop and in my garden. So this white powdery film sealed all the tissue and kept the insect activity away.
This coating is it's also why people think it's a hoax, that it was intended to make the bodies look older and to kind of glue the pieces in place. So this DE, or the diatomaceous earth, it was painted onto the mummies. But let's point this out. In addition to the diatomaceous earth, it was also mixed with a few other compounds. And one of the compounds, it was commonly used as a component of the embalming resin used for Egyptian mummies.
Yeah, and not only that, but the substance itself was carbon dated and it came back ancient as well. Now, I don't know this. I'm not a carbon dating expert, but if you carbon dated some dirt today, like if you went out in your backyard and you carbon dated it, would it be well over 1500 years? I don't know. But the point is that the coating outside the bodies always dated back to the tissue that was tested underneath. So if these were hoaxes, wow, they were fantastic hoaxes. They did a great job. So that is the first dent in the hoax narrative, in my opinion. And to play both sides of what is weird, they also found cadmium chloride on the bodies. Now, cadmium chloride was not discovered until 1817, and it is weird. Why is this on the bodies? It's harmful and poisonous. So if a hoaxer was putting this on the bodies, why would they use something so toxic? And again, people love to think that if we've just only found out about something, there's no way that ancient people would know about this chemical. But look at the Romans and their concrete. It's vastly superior to the concrete that we use today. And we today can't even replicate it. So it's weird that it's on the bodies. But and I also think that what makes it even weirder is it was discovered under the diatomaceous earth. So we have these mummies and they're painted with this cadmium chloride, and then they're painted again with another layer of diatomaceous earth. So it just gets weirder and weirder. And to me, it sounds like they are trying to preserve the bodies, not form a hoax.
Agree. Weirder and weirder. Now, let's get into the weird of the humanoid angle. And not only that, there are distinct species. So, not just one weird species was found, but several different kinds. They are divided into hybrid mummies, insectoids, and reptilian. Now, these mummies, they range in size from 8 inches to a little over 5 feet. The hybrid mummies, most have the three elongated fingers and three toes. Some are mentioned to have four, but they all have the elongated heads and skulls. No noses, only small holes, no ears, and the large orbital sockets. So, very big eyes. And also, very interesting, some have metallic implants that were there long enough to have fused to the living tissue. And for me, that right there screams alien.
Absolutely. So we have these small mummies and they're curled up. Some of them are, some are laying flat and very stiff looking, and some are actually just found sitting, but they're all covered in that white powder. And to make those implants even odder than fusing with the living tissue, they contain pure copper, pure gold, pure silver, and cadmium again, and osmium. Now, osmium, now that's very interesting. It's more expensive than platinum and it is super rare. In fact, it's often found in meteorites. So if you were a hoaxer, I don't think I'd be finding some osmium, melting it down. I don't think that you would make these expensive metals into these implants, but that's just me.
Now, Josephina is one of the tridactyl mummies, considered to be a reptilian hybrid. And Josephina is about 2 feet tall. She has a large implant on her chest. It has two circles and a straight line. But what was interesting, when they really began looking at her, she has a broken vertebrae where the implant is fused to her bone and muscle tissue. Was that kind of a medical procedure to stabilize her or help her? We don't know.
And since you brought up Josephina, let's look at her a little closer. Now, she is a flat mummy. She is very stiff. She's not hugging her legs like the taller mummies. And I don't think we mentioned this, but most of these mummies, actually, I think all of them, they have circular ribs. You know how ours are just kind of on the sides? These ribs, they seem to be circular, and she has 11 sets of ribs. Humans have 24, and her bones are hollow. Now, there's evidence suggests also that her neck could extend upwards, much like a turtle. And here comes, I know that sounds weird, but here comes even more weird. She had three calcified eggs in her reproductive tract, with a fourth forming.
Mary, you mentioned how her neck could extend much like a turtle, and I just got flashbacks to ET. Different
She
side note.
actually, yeah, she actually looks a little bit like ET. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. But to make it even more bizarre, they can see a fetus in one of the eggs. They are able to identify actual bone joints in her fingers, hips. Now, this is important because you can take some bones and stick them together to give you longer fingers if you're trying to hoax something. But to have joints that is muscle, ligaments, cartilage still intact, that's nearly impossible for that to be a hoax. Now, her organs are also there, and she has a biological origin distinct from that which has been described or known by humans. A fluoroscopy scan showed no difference in her bone density. So that means all the bones in her little body are from the same animal. They're not pieced together from many. Nothing is created here. So little chance of a hoax, or at least any that we know of. They've also noted this tympanic bubble. Now, usually that is not pronounced in humans. In humans, it's not prominent. There's this separate bubble, as in many other mammals like cats or rodents. Now, advocates argue that that prominence and the placement of these structures in the Nazca specimens do not match human anatomy. Instead of ears like humans, claims have been made that the size and structure of these bubbles suggest a hearing mechanism that's optimized for different frequencies or environments than those of modern humans. And for the final bit, DNA results, those confirm that it has no direct relationship with any animal organism known or described to date. While 30% of that DNA is known, 70% of it is not.
Wild stuff, Haley. Her jaw was also very different. The way it was designed, it would limit the amount that she could open her mouth. So maybe they didn't communicate the same way that humans do. And she also doesn't have any teeth. But let's point out, many see the skull of Josephina and they say it's a llama cranium. And they say it's just a broken llama cranium rearranged into a face. Now, visually, if you wanted to Google that and look up a llama cranium and then look up Josephina's skull, you could see that. But again, that fluoroscopy scan, there was zero evidence of any type of adhesive and glues that would keep all the bones in alignment. So I'm leaning towards zero chance of that. How do you get all the bones? And again, the bones were hollow. You can't make a tiny humanoid figure from llama bones. And where did those circular hollow ribs come from? Llama bones, they're mammals. They are dense and they're filled with marrow. They're not hollow. So the whole her skull is a llama cranium theory, to me, I don't buy it.
She is all sorts of weird, but let's move on to our second pregnant Nazca mummy, and her name is Montserrat. Now, Montserrat, she is taller at 4 feet 10 inches, also tridactyl with three elongated fingers and toes, and again, the elongated skull. Montserrat has 10 various metal implants in her body, in her wrists, head, chest, shoulder, just small ones, but kind of everywhere throughout her body. She has large orbital sockets, but lips and teeth. And the most fascinating thing about Montserrat is the discovery of a fetus. And they named this fetus Raphael. Raphael is measured to be 18 centimeters long and also has 3 fingers.
Yeah, I love that they name them all. And Montserrat, if you see photos of her, her hands look a little odd. They're kind of just floating out there. And people say that this is part of the hoax. A hand in death wouldn't hold like that. But if you factor in that she was pregnant and a little bit far along from the 18 centimeter fetus, her hand would have been resting on her belly when she died. And as decomposition slowly progressed, the fluid would have drained and her belly would have receded and the hand would have been left frozen in that position. So if you look at the images with that in your mind, you see it and it is so sad.
These scans and images are amazing. I do love this type of science, but the scans also revealed something darker. Montserrat appears to have died violently. They estimate she would have been anywhere between 16 and 25 years old. And there's a puncture wound to her chest between the fifth and the sixth ribs, along with fractures in the scapula and ribs. Now, this led researchers to conclude she and her baby probably died from violent trauma.
So sad. And again, if she is a hoax, the length and the detail that they went through to make that, like she died violently, is insane. But to form a complete fetus and with that floating hand placement to account for a pregnant belly, and not only that, the fetus has the 3 fingers, the same as the mom. Come on. Those Wakiros, man, they were working overtime if they hoaxed these. And I also want to make one more point. Montserrat has no signs of clothing or hair, just like a gray alien. And I think let's look maybe at one more mummy, Haley, before we close. And let's look at the most famous of these mummies, and that is Maria.
Maria was 5 foot 6 inches tall, also a hybrid mummy. She has this elongated skull, a small nose, and only 3 fingers on each hand and 3 toes on each foot. Now, her fingers and toes, they're super long. They have 5 phalanges on each finger and toe. Now, humans have 3 with 2 in our thumb. Montserrat only had 4. Again, for Maria, you could see the joints in her hands and feet, and this is very hard to hoax. Maria was found with no clothing or hair, and when they started studying her skull, they found it had 20% larger capacity than a human skull. And they also estimated her to be between 35 to 45 years old when she died. The latest scans revealed she's most likely to be a male. Whoopsies. Maybe we'll rename her as Mario. But Maria, like many of the others, she has no ears, just small holes. And unlike Montserrat, no nasal bones, but still very large eyes with no eyelashes or eyebrows like the others. So they are all similar, but then again, all very unique, which is interesting. And another reason why people want to ignore scientific scans and scream hoax.
I understand the hesitation. These are not human entities. They are unlike anything we've ever encountered. But if they are human, they're unlike any human we've ever encountered before. But like the male and female species in the world, there are distinctions. So maybe the men or the male figures, they're larger and they have extra bones in their hands and feet. And maybe they don't have a nose, unlike little Montserrat. And I think little noses are adorable. So maybe females had them because, they're just cute.
You're right. They have these cute little button noses. Let's keep looking at Maria or Mario. There's no palm, which is normal for this species. So envision just this wrist within just the fingers, these long fingers. So, like we have a hand with fingers and a palm, they just have these long fingers with extra joints. So, picking things up would still have been very possible. Rhea has fingerprints and fingernails. Now, a human fingernail covers about 45% of our first phalanx. So that top bit of our fingers, Maria's fingernail, that covers about 85% of that first phalanx. So very different in comparison, but they appeared humanoid. So they were not weird looking other than they are just much longer.
Right. They're not like a claw or a sharp thing. They're just like really big, really long fingers. They're you got to look at these pictures, guys. They're crazy. But what I love about Maria, you got me thinking Mario now, but Maria is his fingerprints. Now, he didn't just have fingerprints, he also has toe prints. Now, humans, we have toe prints too, although we don't think about them. We think just fingerprints, and fingerprints are distinctive. If you see a fingerprint, you know what that is. We have loops, we have whorls, we have arches. Every fingerprint is very unique to each of us. Let's just think about that. I mean, how amazing is that? Humans, our bodies were just incredible. But back to Maria and his fingerprints. And a few of these other mummies have also been found with fingerprints. But the crazy thing about them is they are straight lines. There's no distinct pattern, just horizontal grooves, but distinctively looking as fingerprints. So very different. And if we're thinking about a hoax again, if you're going to put a fingerprint on an alien or these mummies, the forethought to think, hey, let's make the fingerprints really different. That's so crazy to me. So crazy.
He would be easy to pick out in a fingerprint lineup for sure. But let's talk
Yes, you would.
about let's talk about what they found when scanning him. His organs and brains, they're still intact. There's some very distinct differences in his skeleton in comparison to humans. For example, the foot and the heel, along with those distinct rounded ribs we find in the Nazca mummies, and a fluoroscopy and CT scan show a continuous articulated skeleton with functional joints, which proponents argue would be nearly impossible to fabricate using modern adhesives or by stitching together disparate bones. Again, how did they achieve this? All of this, if all of these mummies are a hoax, we have experts and multiple experts running all sorts of tests that if on a human, no one would come back and say, that's wrong. They would nod, they'd agree. It's just the subject matter here.
If science comes out openly and says these aren't humans, it changes the paradigm of reality. And what does that look like? Too many people will begin to question everything, which is what I think we all need to do. I mean, for me personally, life makes more sense when I began to dig in and question everything on my own. And people think I'm kooky for that. But when you start to look outside of what you're taught, the entire system is designed for us to learn what they want us to believe. Now, look at schools. Who writes the books? We know who. And who teaches us about the globes and about space and about evolution and not about God? And who teaches us aliens are science fiction and not real? And then sets up these elaborate gaslighting operatives when people start to cry, oh no, they are aliens. It's just confusing and chaotic. So we've got to unlearn everything that we think we know.
There's no arguing with any of that. And I think about our last episode, which is our check engine episode, where Finkelstein was recorded saying it's hard for the masses to believe anything. And it really comes down to controlling the narrative. But let's look at the unfortunate and deliberate attempt and the most damning evidence of all that these mummies are a hoax. In October of 2023, a pair of these reptilian mummies, dressed in clothes, they were confiscated at an airport in Peru. Now, the Peruvian government, they rushed to examine them, and then news like this spread around the world.
Peruvian scientists have confirmed supposed alien mummies are in fact dolls made from bones. The dolls were originally seized in the capital Lima in October last year. Scientists say there is no truth to the theory aliens helped build ancient Incan landmarks like Machu Picchu, calling the ideas fairy tales.
So the two small specimens were described as humanoid dolls by experts at press conferences in Lima. And they went on to say they were likely fashioned from both human and animal parts. The experts ruled out any connection to alien life. Now, is that the end of the case?
Well, to most of the world, and probably you heard it on the news. I don't know, but people think, oh, we heard it on the news, folks. It's not real. It's a big hoax. But what the media and the Peruvian government left out was the man who had the mummies, the man who was arrested at the airport. He immediately said, hey, these aren't real. I just made them to sell. I was just trying to get some extra money from some rich people, trying to pull something over on people. He knew that they weren't real, and he told them up front they weren't real. So the government knew they weren't real. And he didn't try to conceal it, but they decided to go ahead and use that to call them all fake. Of course, if they're testing these and he's saying, no, I made these, they know they're going to be fake. So the Peruvian government has been trying to take possession of these mummies since 2017, right? But remember, now they don't have any real provenance. Do you remember how we discussed that in the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah. And this has been why there has been so much scientific research on these mummies and why we know so much about them. With no legal claim filed and no legit archaeological and sanctioned dig in Peru, the Peruvian Ministry of Culture, or the MOC, they have no legal right to them. And the Ankari Institute has been able to hold on to them. The MOC has tried to take these mummies 7 times. They even turned up at one of their international press conferences thinking that the mummies would be there, but they weren't.
So, since no government has control of these mummies, this is causing the panic and the rampant hoax cries. Because, Mary, you're right. You don't hear that last bit of the story. We hear a man at a Peruvian airport was detained and arrested today because he had two illegal, seemingly alien mummies that the government took possession of and later deemed were a hoax. That has more power than, let's maybe reframe this. A man at the Peruvian airport was detained today because he was caught with what appeared to be two alien mummies, but was later released when the man said he had made them to try to sell on the black market in recent light of the recently discovered Nazca mummies.
So again, they're trying to control the narrative, and the masses dismiss any actual good science. They're just throwing that little disinformation out there, and the whole thing goes bad. But after digging into all of these mummies, and there are a lot of them, I'm not talking about 3 or 4, but many, many, many. And all the testing that they've been doing and going back and forth with the debunkers and the experts. I mean, I've listened to everything that I could find about these mummies, and there's a lot out there. I lean personally that these are legit discovery. Now, just what was discovered, I have thoughts, but where do you stand, Haley? What do you think, hoax or real?
There are definitely, you have the ones that are the hoax out there, just like anything, someone's gonna try to ruin a good thing, but I certainly believe that these are real. With the scans, the joints, these, again, as we've mentioned, are very hard to replicate. I don't think it's a hoax.
I agree. And I don't remember where I heard this, probably on Ancient Aliens, but there's this correlation between the Nazca and the meaning of the word laboratory. Like the valley was known for being a laboratory for the sky people. In our opening story, we kind of saw that with the two creator gods. And for those of you who know, and I mean really know your Bible, Genesis is talking about two different creations. I'm not a heretic, it really does, and a lot of people just lump that together. And that would be an amazing episode. Maybe we could do that someday. And I love strange theology. But my point is, could all these little mummies, all so different and all so similar, be different stages and works of a genetic manipulation? I mean, there are rumors that these little beings are still sighted all over the Nazca Valley and that they live in tunnels under the ground.
I think you make a great point, Mary. They've discovered something like 1,000 square miles of subterranean tunnel system in the Nazca Valley. So I don't know. Could there be underground cities?
And that's the question, Haley. If they are real, then are they still there today, just hiding? And for anyone who wants to dig into these mummies, I highly recommend you go check out our show notes. The website, the.alien.project.com, is the official website, and you can see everything that the Ankari Institute has done on these mummies, see all the documents, see where they even in the beginning petitioned the Peruvian government to come on board and to help them research them, and the Peruvian government never responded to them. So they are doing everything right, and it's just amazing the transparency that they have on this particular website. So go check them out.
Yes, definitely go check it out. And Mary, I gotta say, this has been a really fun episode today, and I hope all of our listeners enjoyed it too. Definitely let us know. What do you think? Do you think this is a hoax or do you think this is real? We'll be curious to hear what you have to say. And as always, if you did love this episode, can you please share this with a friend and hit that 5-star review button if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? And remember, we are audio only on YouTube, so you can still find us there as well. With one last thing to mention, if you have an interesting topic and you would like to be a guest on our show, email us. It's rebelroadguest@gmail.com. We are looking for guests. That's something that we're going to start exploring in 2026, and we're very excited about that. So, Mary, what are the plans for our coming episodes?
Well, actually, there won't be a road stat next week, Haley. We're taking the week off. I'm sorry, guys. Mary needs a week off. But we will be back in 2 weeks with a regular episode and some fresh new road snacks after that. So catch up on some missed episodes or listen to your favorite one more time. Until next time, friends.
Keep it weird and pull it back to Jesus.
Bye.
Bye.